Thank you for this opportunity to take part in your worship service today. I admire your church dedicated to doctrine of love, the quest of truth, and service to community. My thanks also goes to my good friend Carol Kappa, who invited me to take part in this service. It's been my joy to get to know Carol and Sue through New Wineskins community that has as our mission the reclaiming of the divine feminine in order to contribute to peace and justice. Reclaiming multicultural female names and images of the holy can contribute to healing our broken world. Including female divine images in our sacred rituals affirms the sacred value of females throughout the world who continue to suffer from violence and abuse. The earth, traditionally referred to as feminine, likewise suffers from exploitation and abuse. Rituals that include female images can make a powerful contribution to a more just, peaceful, and sustainable world. Our first hymn was Celebrate the Works of Wisdom. Wisdom is among the female names and images of deity common to many religious and spiritual traditions. Wisdom is Hokmah in Hebrew, Hikmah in Arabic, Sophia in Greek. She also comes as the Black Madonna and Kuan Yin. But male names and images of deity predominate in most religions. Most of the world's religions are patriarchal. At the foundation of patriarchal religions and cultures is the image of a male god, sanctioning patterns of dominance and submission. Our sacred language and visual symbolism carry great power. Female names and images of the divine provide a strong foundation for social justice and peace. Our words and visual images can also contribute to racial justice by changing the traditional symbolism of darkness as negative and light as positive, instead naming darkness as sacred and imaging the divine as dark to emphasize the sacred value of people of color. So multicultural female divine names and images in rituals form a foundation for gender equality, which intersects with care of creation, nonviolence, marriage equality, racial equality, and economic justice. These two quotes emphasize the power of language and visual imagery. The language that we use constitutes our world and beliefs. It is in language that societies construct their views of reality. Even when abstract conceptualization of God are formulated in the mind, masculine images have a way of surviving in the imagination. Words shape our beliefs and actions, our beliefs and values, which drive our actions. Words and visual symbols we use in worship have great power because of the sacred value given to them. We can contribute to transforming our world through inclusive language and imagery in our sacred rituals, thus contributing to a just and peaceful world. Some people use the term inclusive to mean gender neutral, but I use it to mean language that includes females and all genders. Some people ask, why not just use non-gender words for deity? Some use God, saying it's gender neutral, but most people still think of God as male and refer to God as he. And because of centuries of association of God with male pronouns and imagery, this word generally evokes male images. Even words like spirit and love and peace don't name the female as sacred. Just like the Black Lives Matter movement has taught us that though all lives matter, we need to name that Black lives matter because they've not mattered enough in our culture. So we need to name females in the divine image, though all genders are in the divine image, because females have not been considered sacred, and the female divine has not been named and valued. We need to name that which has been unnamed, demeaned, devalued, and oppressed. So whether theist or non-theist, we can use words and images that affirm the sacred value of females. Divine mystery exceeds all our thoughts and language, so all of our language for divinity is metaphorical. Hebrew and Christian scriptures give a multiplicity of divine images to suggest the vastness and all-inclusiveness of our Creator. This is an image by artist Pam Allen, and other visual images I have in these slides are attributed to various artists. If they're not designated, the artists are unknown and in public domain. You see here a collage that includes the divine feminine in a very prominent place, God as mother, nurturer, along with some of the more traditional images of God as father, shepherd, non-gender images like bread and dove and lily and light. Genesis 1:27 reveals female and male in the divine image, but the language of litanies and hymns and visual images in most churches, synagogues, temples reveal worship of a white male God. Throughout the city of Fort Worth, the Metroplex, the country, all over the world, if you go into almost any worship space this morning, you will hear only male names for deity and see male visual images. This prevalent worship of a white male God sanctions the dominance of white males. Denying deity of female faith diminishes the sacred value of females. President Jimmy Carter, in his book A Call to Action, asserts that discrimination and violence against women and girls are the world's most serious violations of human rights, and he indicts patriarchal religion as the foundation for this discrimination and violence. Nicholas Kristof and Cheryl Woodun in Half the Sky lament the gendercide resulting from the violence inflicted routinely on women and girls in much of the world, which they call one of the paramount human rights problems of this century. The Me Too movement and the current Supreme Court confirmation hearings have underscored the pervasiveness of sexual harassment and assault women around the world suffer. In the United States alone, every 9 seconds a woman is battered. An estimated 1 in 3 women in the world experiences some kind of abuse in her lifetime. The responses to the Me Too movement indicate that estimate may be too low. Worldwide, an estimated 4 million women and girls each year are bought and sold into prostitution, slavery, or marriage. 70% of the world's poor are women. The exclusively male language for deity in most worship services, even in progressive faith communities, you'll find these, forms a foundation for worldwide violence and discrimination against females by devaluing us through exclusion. Men as well as women suffer from the worship of an exclusively masculine deity and by the elimination of the feminine deity. Making the ultimate power of the universe male gives the strongest support imaginable to the dominance of men. This often leads to violence. The earth and all creation suffer from patriarchal theology and culture. References to the earth are feminine, but the earth is not given sacred value. We're all in deep need of healing. Church historian Reverend Dr. Courtney Pace states, patriarchy is at the root of every systemic evil, including slavery, racism, sexism, classism, heterosexism, and every other form of oppression. And at the foundation of patriarchy is a male God. We can contribute to transforming our world through subverting the foundation of patriarchy and laying a foundation for equality and justice through female names and images of the divine, thus giving sacred value to females. think of it as giving affirmative action for the female divine. As with the social evil of racism, Scripture is used to sanction sexism and heterosexism and other evils. The prophetic tradition in Scripture always points toward liberation and justice. So you know people and you hear Scripture so often used to diminish people or devalue people, take away rights of women and rights of LGBTQ people and other people. So we can use Scripture and other sacred texts, all sacred texts, for liberation and justice. And we can reclaim these female divine names and images, including them along with male and non-gender images, to empower us all to claim our sacred worth. A quote from Elizabeth Cady Stanton to show you the power of Scripture for good or evil. So we might as well know it enough to use it for good. As woman has ever been degraded by the perversion of the religious element of her nature, the scriptural arguments were among the earliest used to hold her in her divinely ordained sphere. When opponents were logically cornered on every other side, they uniformly fell back on the decrees of heaven. The ignorance as to what the Bible really does teach has been the chief cause of women's bondage. So there are female divine names and images in Hebrew and Christian scriptures and in a lot of religious traditions, and we can resurrect these female divine names and images to reclaim the sacred worth and value of all. One of the most powerful feminine divine images is that of the creative spirit, Ruah in Hebrew. The Spirit moves over the face of the waters to give birth to the universe. The Hebrew word translated spirit, ruah, is feminine. The word translated here moving, rakath, is used to compare God to a mother eagle in Deuteronomy. So the first word for spirit in the Bible is feminine. The first picture of God is of a mother eagle giving birth to the universe. Women are empowered to embrace our creativity when we discover that the creative spirit is female, reinforcing the belief that we are in her image and thus creative. All genders are empowered to embrace aspects of creativity that have traditionally been labeled and disparaged as feminine. In Christian scriptures, there's also the image of the Spirit giving birth, paralleling the Hebrew scripture references to the Spirit Ruah giving birth to the universe. The image of a feminine spirit giving birth is central. One of the oldest biblical texts, a Syriac version, records Jesus calling the Spirit she. The Spirit, the Paraclete, she shall teach you everything. The birthing spirit in various cultures. Mother eagle. This is that image in Deuteronomy where deity is pictured as a mother eagle who stirs up her nest to get the eaglets out on their own to hunt their own food. Then she takes them on her wings and swoops down to force them to fly alone. But she always stays close enough to swoop back under them when they become too weary and weak to continue flying on their own. This is a beautiful picture of love, caring and nurturing us when we are weak, yet always aiming at the goal of our maturity. The image of the divine midwife that I highlighted in the video that you saw, that you just watched, Midwife Divine Now Calls Us, focusing on this beautiful image of the divine midwife aiding in birth and protection of young. This image, I think, is calling us forth to birth a new thing in our time too. It's a birthing image. Also, It's a powerful sanction for midwives who for centuries were maligned, imprisoned, excommunicated, even burned as witches. You can just imagine how different things would have been had this biblical image been taken seriously. This verse balances female and male divine images, comparing God to a master and to a mistress in an ancient household. This is one of the many passages personifying wisdom as a divine feminine image, crying out to her children to follow her. The Hebrew word for wisdom, chokmah, is feminine. Feminine pronouns are used to refer to wisdom. This, I think, is one of the most empowering biblical feminine images, that divine wisdom is presented as female, empowers us to embrace our wisdom and all our intellectual and spiritual gifts that have been devalued for centuries. Also, for those who need it, this is biblical support for referring to God as she. This verse in Isaiah pictures deity crying out like a woman in labor because of the unfaithfulness of her children. Whether or not we've experienced the labor of childbirth, we've all labored and often suffered as we've labored. Sometimes we've suffered because our labor seems in vain or our work is rejected, trivialized, demeaned. This picture of deity as a woman in labor, suffering, can strengthen us with the belief that our labor takes part in her labor and her labor takes part in ours. The nurturing woman. Deity is a nurturing woman who can never forget her children. Whether or not we physically nursed a child, we have nurtured others. We know the tender bond we have with those we've nurtured. This image supports nurturing gifts in those of all genders. Clement of Alexandria, a 2nd century Orthodox Christian writer, church father, refers to the milk of God by which we infants alone, are nourished. Teresa of Avila in the 16th century refers to the breast milk of God. The divine feminine was obscured in church history, but at times we see glimpses of her. This beautiful picture of the comforting mother I've often used in my ministry as a chaplain. As a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you. You shall be comforted. John Calvin, that John of the Protestant Reformation, states that in no other way than by maternal images can God's ardent love and tenderness be expressed. Calvin was far from a feminist, but he couldn't overlook the biblical witness of female divine images. Hosea images deity as a furious mother bear robbed of her cubs. This image is an important balance to tender, gentle female images. When injustice is done, the feminine deity gets angry. In this passage, she is angry because people have not fulfilled their part of the covenant. There are times when we have a right to get angry. This divine feminine picture not only gives divine sanction to our anger, but also helps break down binaries, those stereotypes of masculine and feminine traits. Matthew records Jesus' self-description as a mother hen who wants to gather her brood under her wings. St. Augustine, one of the most important of the church fathers, 4th century, links Christ and female wisdom, Sophia, through this image of mother hen. Based on this passage, St. Anselm in the 11th century prays to Jesus as mother. Although Augustine and Anselm expressed misogynistic views elsewhere, they couldn't overlook this and other divine feminine images in the Bible. Jesus balances female and male divine images in the parable of the lost sheep and the lost coin. The passage preceding this one pictures deity as a male shepherd searching for his lost sheep, and this passage pictures deity as a woman searching for her lost coin. Gender balanced divine images in these parables underscores the main point. Our Creator loves and places infinite value on individuals of all genders. Again, Jesus balances female and male divine images in the parables of the mustard seed and the yeast. The parable preceding this one compares the reign of God to a mustard seed that a man sowed in a garden, and this parable compares the reign of God to yeast, which a woman mixed in with flour to make bread. The creative woman could be pictured as creating anything from something seemingly small and insignificant, like yeast or potter's clay. Elsewhere, there's a biblical image of the potter, but it's usually pictured as a masculine potter. Here we have a beautiful female potter pictured. The Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians refers to Christ as the wisdom, Sophia of God, who became for us wisdom, Sophia from God. The word for wisdom in the original Greek language of Christian scriptures is Sophia. Origen, a 3rd century church father, stated that Sophia is the most ancient and appropriate title for Jesus. So the use of the name Sophia for Christ is not new. For those in the Christian tradition, this is biblical support for referring to Christ as she. Gender equality in divine images and the equality of all genders in faith communities help restore mutual harmonious relationships. The inclusion of female divine names and images in worship and ministry empowers our work of peace and justice in the world by helping to break down patriarchal structures that keep so many people in poverty and oppression. Inclusive language and imagery support gender justice that intersects with racial and other justice concerns. Viewing deity as including and transcending female and male releases all genders to experience a deeper spirituality as we have greater freedom to fulfill our potential in the divine image. Including female divine names and images helps free the creative spirit in all of us. Affirming the sacred value of all genders frees us all to claim our creative gifts, to open ourselves to the fullness of the creative spirit within us. Female divine names and images give sacred value to the earth, supporting our work of caring for creation. With all the injustices and violence in our world, we often feel overwhelmed and wonder what we can do. We all want to make a difference. Here at Westside Unitarian Universalist Church, you make a positive difference in the lives of church members and the world at large through your engagement with one another and through social justice actions. You can also make a positive difference as you include female divine names and images in worship and religious education. Words carry great power. Words shape our beliefs and values, which drive our actions. Through our words, we can affirm the sacred value of females and contribute to equality, peace, and justice. We contribute to transforming our world through including female names and images of the divine. I invite you to speak and sing her name, to experience her transforming power. beginning now. I invite you now to rise in body or spirit and sing our closing hymn, Ruah the Spirit breathes in our soul, found on the insert in your order of service.